Now while you're watching this video, please remember to like, share this video, subscribe to my channel and click the bell icon so that you can receive notifications of future videos. Thank you. Welcome back to my channel, guys. I am hoping that you're seeing me clearly. I am recording yet again another video, and I am doing so at one of my least favorite places to record a video, in my room. And can I tell you that there's a little bit of heat, right? And as a result of that, I'm going to try to do this as quick as possible before my face starts to sweat. If I turn on the fan, you're going to hear noises. Perhaps you're even hearing noises at this present time because the TV is on outside and so forth. But nevertheless, with that being said, let us have a go at it, right? As you can see, the title suggests, does unclean mean unhealthy? The Seventh-day Adventist Church, I don't know how many Old Covenant believers actually interpret unclean as unhealthy. Now, you may be saying, Kismar, why are you styling groups as Old Covenant? Surely there will be no professed legitimate Christian group who would actually boldly claim that they are Old Covenant believers, because the Bible clearly teaches that we are under a new covenant. So why are you styling groups, calling them Old Covenant believers? The reason why I am doing such is because while they claim to be New Covenant believers, they are still hanging on to Old Covenant teachings and so forth. In their ignorance, they are not aware, because as far as they are concerned, those things are carried over into the New Covenant as well. But it is not. So therefore, they are an Old Covenant believers, irrespective of the fact that they are not aware of it. So I call them Old Covenant believers. SDAs, Hebrew Israelite Movement, Seventh-day Baptist, Seventh-day Church of God, the whole lot of them, they are Old Covenant believers. Right? And I don't say that to disrespect them or anything, but it's just the truth. And that's what being an apologist is. You have to speak the truth. Right? This is what apologists do. We speak the truth. You understand? So these Old Covenant believers have it to say that when God said unclean, it really means unhealthy. I'm going to read a few quotes for you from Ellen G. White, and I'm also going to look at their fundamental belief so that you can see that they really interpret unclean as unhealthy. Quote from Councils on Diet: the issue of swine, the tissues of the swine swarm with parasites. Of the swine, God said, it is unclean unto you. You shall not touch. You shall not eat of their flesh nor touch their dead carcass. The command was given because swine flesh is unfit for food. Swine are scavengers, and this is the only use they were intended to serve. Never under any circumstances was their flesh to be eaten by human beings. Now there are several other quotes, right? There are several other quotes that were in this where she continues to talk about that, but I'm going to put it in the comment section. I'm not going to read all of it, right? Where she goes on further to explain to you that basically pork or pig, swine, it is not healthy for you, and so this is why God doesn't want his people basically to eat it. It is unclean, aka unhealthy. So this is the first evidence that you're getting, right? That Ellen White interprets unclean to mean unhealthy. Now I'm going to look at their fundamental belief. Fundamental belief number 22. Oh Lord, I'm hoping that I didn't lose it. It's supposed to be in my phone, guys, but I'm seriously hoping that I never lost it. Alright, so tell you what, I'm not able to find it at this present time. I'm going to put it in the comment section for you guys to see it. Their fundamental belief. They claim that unclean means unhealthy. So what we are going to do, we are going to look at Leviticus chapter 14, as well as a few verses in Deuteronomy chapter 14, where the Bible talks about unclean. so that you can see if what they're saying is actually true or not. Right, guys? So with that being said, we'll first begin with Leviticus chapter 11. Now, I'm not going to read all of the verses, right? I am just going to read a few verses. Leviticus 11 verse 21. This is what God said. Yet these may ye eat of every flying, creeping thing that goeth upon all four, which have legs above their feet, to leap withal upon the earth. Even these of them ye may eat. The locust after his kind, the locust after his kind, and the ball locust after his kind, and the beetle after his kind, and the grasshopper after his kind. But all other flying, creeping things which have 4 feet shall be an abomination unto you. And for these ye shall be unclean. Whosoever toucheth the carcass of them shall be unclean until the evening. Now here's a question that I want to ask you. Because, first and foremost, the Hebrew word for unclean there, it definitely means ceremonially unclean. You will see me put it on the screen. It means ceremonially unclean. Nothing by the in it actually says that it means unhealthy. You look at the Hebrew word, it says nothing about unhealthy. The Hebrew word for unclean, it means ceremonially unclean. Right? But we are going to apply some common sense now, and let's just disregard the Hebrew word for now. Let's apply some common sense. Let's change the word unclean and put unhealthy and see if what SDAs and those Old Covenant believers are saying, if it's actually true or not. No, let me fix that. I don't know if these other groups interpret unclean to mean unhealthy, so let me take that back. I'm not aware. I'm just going to talk about SDA for now, because I don't know if those other Old Covenant groups, if they interpret unclean as unhealthy. So let's just use SDA. Let's change unclean and put unhealthy, and let's see if what SDA is saying actually makes sense. And for these he shall be unhealthy. Whosoever toucheth the carcass of them shall be unhealthy until the evening. So 1, according to SDAs, anybody who touch the carcass of them, right, shall be unclean. They shall be unhealthy. Right? How is it that you can, by touching a dead animal, any dead animal, do some Google research? But even if you Google it, you'd be a fool to actually Google. Save your finger strength and don't even bother to Google that, because that makes absolutely no sense. It is ridiculous and utterly absurd to think that if you touch a dead animal, you can actually become unhealthy. So don't even bother to Google that. Don't waste your finger strength, right, guys? Secondly, it says they'll be unclean until the evening. So does it mean that if you touch a dead carcass, right, you'll be unhealthy for a few hours, and then in the evening you'll now be healthy? Does that even make any sense to you guys? Does that even make any sense? It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Unclean does not mean unhealthy. When God said certain things were unclean, he never meant that they were unhealthy. He meant that they were ceremonially unclean. This is why I stressed in several of my videos, my video on diet, Romans 14, and talking about Noah, I gave the analogy by saying that in Leviticus 11, I think it's verse 4, God said, it is unclean unto you. Speaking of Israel, it is unclean unto you. Ceremonially unclean. That means that it is not naturally unclean. It is only unclean for his chosen people. That is why he said unclean unto you. Those beasts were not naturally unclean. They were all good. You understand? And that is why in Genesis 9, you find God telling Noah that every living creature is food for you, right? If it was a case where certain foods were unclean then ceremonially, then there is no way God would have told Noah to eat any beast for his own choosing. And if God were so concerned about health, he would not have told him to eat any beast that you feel like to eat. You understand? So it goes to show that God wasn't so concerned much about health, and he wasn't so much concerned about ceremony, what ceremonially clean and what isn't, for the purpose of food. You understand? I have the video on Noah and Romans 14. I'll try to pin it in the comment section for you to check it out. Right, guys? Now, the reason why there is not much concern from God about the physical body, whether a thing is good for a man's body or not, it is because the soul is actually more important than the body. You understand? Whether any, it doesn't matter how long it will be, the body will naturally decay. Right? So whether you want to eat healthy or not, the body is going to decay. Your soul is what is important. And this is why Jesus stressed when he was talking about not what goeth into a man defiling, but what comes out. It is because what comes out comes from the heart. And the heart is deeply connected to your soul. You understand? The heart is your inner being, you know. Right? That's what is important to God. What is inside. What is inside here, and not the flesh of itself, because the flesh will decay. This is something that Seventh-day Adventists don't understand when I say that the soul is more important than the body. And what will make it hard for them to understand too is because they don't believe that man have an immaterial spirit. So that makes it even harder for them to comprehend this truth. I'm gonna have to do a video on that. It's a video that have been requested for a long time from some subscribers of mine. But I pushed away that issue because I find the teachings on the law, Sabbath and so forth more important. But that's a study that I have to look at. Seventh-day Adventist teaching on the soul of a man, right? They call it soul sleep. Because they don't believe that man have an immaterial spirit, they can't see that the spirit is what is important to God. The soul, right? And not the flesh. Jesus said it himself. Fear not the man who can destroy the body, but can't destroy the soul. But fear him who is able to destroy both body and soul in hell. This goes to show you that the soul is the key thing, not the body. That is why God said don't fear them, because they can only destroy the body. The soul is what God is concerned about, and not your body. And that is why he is not so much concerned about people's health and so forth. No. What he's concerned about is your soul. And as I get down further into Leviticus 11, you are going to see that unclean doesn't mean unhealthy, and God doesn't, the issue for God is not about health and so forth. Right? With that being said, I'm going to continue. 32 to 33. Upon whatsoever any of them, when they are dead, doth fall, it shall be unclean. Whether it be any vessel of wood, or raiment, or skin, or sack, whatsoever vessel it be, wherein any work is done, it must be put into water, and shall be unclean until the evening. So shall it be cleansed. This is talking the unclean beasts, you know. Anything that those unclean beasts happen to touch, they will be unclean until the evening, right? And you have to wash it. In order for it to be cleansed, you must put it in water, and it shall be unclean until the evening. So shall it be cleansed. So that means to say that if you have one of those unclean beasts, according to SDAs, unclean means unhealthy. And let's say that unclean beast happen to fall on a chair, right? That chair is going to basically be unclean or unhealthy until the evening. Oh dear, oh dear. Sometimes I feel so sorry for SDAs, honest to God. If a unclean animal, you know, drop on a chair, that unclean animal, according to them, the chair would be unhealthy until the evening, and you have to wash it in order for it to be then healthy. You see how silly this actually sounds? Sounds very silly, right? I'll give you a few more verses before I close. Remember in Leviticus 11 verse 32, where it says that whatsoever vessel it be, whereupon work is done, it must be put into water, and it shall be unclean until the evening. So it shall be cleansed. So any item that these beasts fall upon that becomes unclean, you have to put it in water, right? And it will be clean until the evening. right? And every earthen vessel, verse 33, whereinto any of them falleth, whatsoever is in it shall be unclean, and he shall break it. Right? So that means, according to SDAs, anything that is in the vessel will then be unhealthy. Right? If it is that this vessel happen to fall on something that is unclean, the vessel become unclean, and whatever is inside the vessel become unclean, right? So that means that both the vessel and what is inside, according to SDA reckoning, they both will be unhealthy. And when you put it into the water now, right, for it to be cleansed, the water then becomes unclean, because verse 34 says, of all the meat which may be eaten, that on which such water cometh shall be unclean, and all drink that may be drunk in every such vessel shall be unclean. So that means to say now, right, that if the same water that is used to cleanse an item that is unclean, if that water happen to touch any of those beasts that are clean, which you can eat, the beast is going to then become unclean. So that means that the water that is now unclean, right, or according to SDAs would be unhealthy. Once that unclean or unhealthy water goes on a clean or a healthy beast, then the beast is going to become unhealthy, because unhealthy water fall on the beast. It doesn't make no sense whatsoever, right, guys? It's very hard to wrap your head around it and know that, because it doesn't make any sense whatsoever, right? And verse 35, I'm trying to make this as short as possible. Everything whereupon any part of their carcass falleth shall be unclean, whether it be oven, ranges, or pot, they shall be broken down. They are unclean and shall be unclean unto you. So anything that those unclean beasts fall on, oven or whether or so forth, it become unhealthy according to SDA, and it's unhealthy to you. Right? Well, I'm going to give one final verse now. You have to read the entire chapter for yourself and try to make sense out of it. When you translate the word unclean and put SDA thinking in it and put unhealthy, you're going to see that Leviticus 11 is not going to make no sense whatsoever. The last one that I'm going to look at, verse 39, and if any beast of which he may eat die, he that toucheth the carcass thereof may be unclean. So that means, that those clean beasts, notice it said, any beast of which you can eat, if the beast die of itself, and you touch the carcass, then it's going to be unclean until the evening. And he that eateth of the carcass of it shall wash his clothes until evening. He also that bear the carcass of it shall wash his clothes and be unclean until the evening. So that means to say, if a clean beast, let's say chicken or a fowl, right, a bird, fowl, and it happens to die of itself, if you touch that, you become unclean, because it die of itself. You never kill the beast itself, it die a natural death. It's unclean, right? So according to them, it would be unhealthy. And if you touch it, not just it will be unhealthy, but not even if you don't eat it, but just touching it alone is going to make you quote unquote unclean, or no, not unclean, unhealthy. Since it say you become unclean, for SDAs it would then be unhealthy, right? Deuteronomy chapter 14 picks up on this very same thing about a dead carcass, and you're going to find something even sharp mentioned here that will sum up everything for you. Let me find the text for you guys, because it's going to sum up everything. Deuteronomy 14 verse 21. Ye shall not eat of anything that dieth of itself. Thou shalt give it unto the stranger that is in thy gates, that he may eat it. Or thou mayest sell it unto an alien, for thou art an holy people unto the Lord thy God. Thou shalt not seethe a kid in his mother's milk. If you translate unclean in this text, it's not going to make any sense. Right? If you think of Deuteronomy 14 to be saying unclean mean unhealthy, it's not going to make any sense, because why would God, knowing that something is unhealthy, forbid his people from eating it, but they can take it and give it to the stranger that is in the gate, so that they can eat it, right? Or they can sell it to an alien, or anyone that is not a part of Israel. You can sell it to them, but you must not eat it. This won't make any sense if you see unclean as unhealthy. If you see it as ceremonially unclean, then it makes more sense. Because here God gives the reason why he doesn't want his people to eat it. For thou art an holy people unto the Lord thy God. You are holy, and because you're holy, I don't want you to eat these things. Leave it to other persons who are quote unquote not holy. Right? These persons are not holy, they are not a part of the camp, and so forth. So you can give it to them. But you who is an holy people, you shouldn't eat it. Bingo. It goes to show you that it's not, when it say unclean, it doesn't mean unhealthy. It means ceremonially unclean. Because why would God be would needlessly want to kill off persons who is not a part of the camp of Israel? Why would he want to do that? This is a question that you have to ask, When you fast forward and go back to Leviticus chapter 11, right? You see the same thing being mentioned, the same reason for not eating up things that are unclean, or touching things that are unclean. Verse 44, God says, for the reason here given, I am the Lord your God. Ye shall therefore sanctify yourselves, and ye shall be holy, for I am holy. Neither shall you defile yourselves with any manner of creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. For I am the Lord that bringeth you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. You shall therefore be holy, for I am holy. Right? This is the reason that is basically given, right? Don't partake of certain beasts, don't touch them or eat them. You understand? Because they are unclean, ceremonially, not unhealthy. And this is why in Genesis 9 you find God telling Noah, every living creature you can eat them, because the issue is not unhealthy. Right? The issue is unclean. And at that time, they were not ceremonially unclean for persons to eat. Right? They were only ceremonially unclean, right? For sacrifice. This is what I pointed out in my study on Noah. Right? They were unclean only for sacrifice, but not for food. This goes to show that the issue here, it is not unhealthy, it is rather unclean. Right? Ceremonially unclean. I hope the point actually hit home for you guys. Right? The truth is that there are some foods or some animals that while they are classified as were classified as ceremonially unclean, it so happens that some of them are unhealthy, but not all of them. There are some of them who were considered ceremonially unclean, and it's not unhealthy for you. Like a case in point, shrimp. If you Google shrimp, it's going to tell you that shrimp, it is not unhealthy. It is not unhealthy for you. Perhaps pig, you can probably build a case on it, because pig, if not prepared properly, then it's going to be unhealthy for you, and it can cause problem if you don't prepare it properly. But if you prepare it properly, it's doubtful that it will have any harm on you. I know persons who have been eating pig for all their life, and when they do die, that's not the cause of death. It's not any cancer or anything. Nothing their death can't be linked to them eating pig, and some of them actually live a long life too. Persons who actually eat pig. You understand, guys? So yes, so I end this video, guys. I do hope that you enjoyed. If you did, you know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe, and share this video. And one more thing, just before I go, I'm going to show you a short clip of one of SDA top scholars who is now retired. He goes by the name of George Knight. You're going to hear his confession, right, on clean and unclean, and you're basically going to see that what George Knight is going to tell you is basically the same thing that I actually break down to you, right? Because you see, the thing is, guys, there are a lot of members in the Seventh-day Adventist Church who are trying to change the teachings them slowly, right? And this is what a lot of current Seventh-day Adventist members doesn't know that some of the leaders who are on the evangelical side, right, they are trying to change the teaching slowly, but SDA members don't realize this, right? So I'm going to show you the clip and end the video upon showing you the clip. So with that being said, bye bye now guys, check out the clip.
Welcome to Biblios, the space where we think about biblical thinking. Today we'll be looking at Adventist approaches to diet.
Once again, we have Dr. George Knight with us. Thank you, Dr. Knight, for being here.
Saturday. We didn't keep it from even to even. It wasn't until the late 50s that we got that figured out. We didn't have tithing figured out until the late 70s. Our theology and our understanding of lifestyle continued to develop across time. So I used to teach a course called The Development of Seventh-day Adventist Theology. I think you said you used my book as a textbook.
Yeah.
The Search for Identity.
Yeah.
It goes through the stages of the development of Adventist theology and the different focal points that we reached. Our theology had a developmental course, and the same with our lifestyle, and the same with our organizational understanding. And we're still in the process of understanding some of those things.
Some people might be uncomfortable with the idea that the position changed. How do we account for that? Because surely when you open Leviticus 11, it seems quite clear that, you know, some things are to be eaten, some things are not to be eaten.
Well, there are other passages. Try Mark 7. Jesus said all things are clean.
Yeah.
But you've got to recognize, for the Jew, it was not a health issue. It was ceremonially unclean. Okay? When Antiochus Epiphanes IV wanted to desecrate the temple, what did he sacrifice on the altar?
A pig.
A hog! It was ceremonially unclean. For the Jews, Jesus never said all food has been declared healthy, but all food has been declared clean, because there are no ceremonial differences anymore. It just so happens that most of those things which were unclean were also unhealthy. The Adventist focus is on unhealthiness, not cleanliness. There's good reasons, and James White picked out Acts 10, but if you read Acts 10, Jesus says, I have declared all men